Today we're talking all things craws, our favorite ones, our favorite ways to rig them, and how we're gonna fish them. Let's check it out. How's it going, guys? Travis from Tackle Bros, and today I thought it'd be cool if we sat down and started, breaking down some of our favorite bait categories in the store. Now, one of my personal favorites are craw profile baits. So this is gonna be basically anything that's gonna look like a crayfish or a crawfish or however you say it, depending on where you are. And this is one of the most effective style of baits in fishing. Everywhere has little crawfish for the most part. If you're in a weird spot that doesn't, sorry. But yeah, we're gonna talk about some of our favorite ones in the shop. And I'm gonna start right here with one of my all-time personal favorites, the O.S.P DoLive Craw. Now, this guy is gonna be available in a 2-inch, a 3-inch, a 4-inch, and a 5-inch. So you can pretty much match up exactly what size or match into certain baits. This is the 2-inch and the 3-inch side by side. So it is quite a substantial size difference based on what you're going with. Now, the 3-inch for me has become my all-time favorite jig trailer. So if you're a big jig guy, this thing on the back of a jig is an absolute killer. It's gonna have these 2 appendages on the side. Sometimes I actually lose that top one when I rip it off to kind of fit into the jig. You're gonna have a couple tentacles here in the front, and then you're gonna have these amazing claws. The one is actually on a bit of a hinge, gives it an amazing amount of action in the water. Now, these aren't floating, but they do tend to trap a little bit of air under them. So when it comes down, it will still stand up for a second and then just fall back down naturally. The DoLive Craw is kind of that do everything craw for me. 4-inch is one of my favorite Texas rig style flipping baits. Both of these are also awesome on a Carolina rig, on a free rig. We drop shot these things sometimes, just depending on the situation. So if we're in, long vegetation, we'll just kind of T-rig, drop shot these, power shot it, if you will, in the 4-inch and the 3-inch. These are my 2 pretty much staple sizes, I would say. I do go to the 5-inch if, I'm getting bites and I'm looking for a bigger bite. But if you stick with the 3 and the 4-inch, you're gonna be in pretty good shape. So that's the O.S.P DoLive Craw. I'd probably say it's my number 1. It's probably the number 1 seller in the shop. We also have a bunch of shop custom colors. So this one that I'm holding here is Special Ops. And then this one here is Okane. So these are our 2 shop custom colors. Custom color colors, what a saying. Yeah, so check those out from O.S.P. And then from there, we're going to move over to our friends at Geecrack. So this is the Geecrack Bellows Craw. And right away when you open the package, you get hit with that SAF, that salt amino flavoring. This has one of the best scents of any bait that I know of. Basically, always gonna be the same concept. You're gonna have 2 big claws, you're gonna have a couple tentacles in the front and then some legs on the side. I like throwing this on a football head. So this comes over cover very nicely. The claws on this are actually pretty heavy and dense. So they're not gonna stand up or anything, but it's just gonna come over cover nicely. It's gonna flip up and back as you go. It's also a great flipping bait. They come in a bunch of amazing colors and only one size. So this is a 3.5-inch bait. So kind of an in-between size. Pairs up great with jigs. If you're throwing a football jig or just a regular football head, that's kind of my preferred way for this guy. So check this one out from Geecrack. Next up, we're gonna have a look at one of the most hyped products in the most recent years, and that is gonna be the Megabass Sleeper Craw. Now, this one has 2 very specific things I do with it. And you're gonna need different rods, but the hook will hold up for both. So first and foremost, I love dragging this thing. So basically, I'll throw it out there, let it hit bottom, drag it along. Every once in a while, give it a little snap. It's an absolute killer if you're just trying to fish around flats or points, just cover a little bit of water. After that, I also use this as a jig. So I go to my jig rod, a heavy rod as opposed to that medium heavy. Same thing, flip it under docks, flip it around grass with this weed guard that they've built in here. So the hook is just hiding inside of the body. This is an amazing, especially around grass, this is an amazing jig. So I think at its core, it's a jig, and it's also an amazing dragging bait. Now with this guy, it's 5/8 ounces. It doesn't fish like it's 5/8 ounces. It fishes more like or almost half ounce. It doesn't have a crazy fall rate, so you can kind of get away with throwing it on something a little bit of a lighter rod. I'm using the FMJ when I'm dragging. If I'm flipping, I'm using an 894. So those are kind of my two rods that I've been using this on. Now this is an elastomer material, so it's very, very durable, very stretchy, holds up very well. And then that jig is just buried inside of the body. Amazing hookup ratio. The hook is amazing on this guy, and it just flat out catches them. So when I'm dragging, these claws are actually floating up in a defensive position. This is where the floating claws kind of start to come into play. So this guy's just down there, laying on bottom. Claws are kind of up in that defensive position that bass are used to when they're trying to eat these things. This guy's a killer. So if you guys like flipping, you guys like flipping craw style baits, this is an amazing one. Also, if you're just trying to cover a bit of water and you're kind of, you know, dragging bottom, this is a really good tube alternative. And generally you can throw it on casting gear, which is always nice. Jack them, get them into the boat. When I'm dragging, I'm usually using either 12 to 14 pound fluorocarbon. And then when I'm flipping, I'm either using 50 pound straight braid or 20 pound fluorocarbon as my mainline. So check this one out from Megabass. It's been ultra popular, comes in a ton of amazing craw colors, and then just some little weird ones for you guys that are just trying to either do something different, or maybe you need something for sight fishing, or they just eat weird colors in your area. So check these out from Megabass. From there, let's do GLF. So Great Lakes Finesse is one of our favorite brands in the store. They make a ton of awesome downsized profiles. So I'm going to talk about two from them actually. The first one I'm going to talk about is going to be the 2.1 inch snack craw. So on most of these, except for the clear ones, the claws are going to float. I pair it up with their little stealth football head. I've used this as a football jig trailer, some of the smaller ones. It works amazingly. If you're using that K-Tech one, it works great. They also have a skirted ball head jig now that pairs up amazing with this. We've drop shotted it. This is a very versatile little bait. So this is their stealth football head. I'm just gonna show you how good this looks on this. So there it is rigged up on their stealth football head. Just an amazing little downsized craw profile. A lot of the fish tend to pick on the smaller craw. Their shell's a little bit softer. This just kind of imitates that. It comes through cover amazingly. It's also very durable. So generally when you get it onto this with that collar that they have built onto the jig, it stays on there really good. The claws don't rip off. It's not that super thin kind of connection that you generally get with them. But this guy, same thing. Claws float up. It looks in a defensive standpoint. It's just a really, really good one from Great Lakes Finesse. From there, we're gonna have a look at probably one of my favorite baits from the entire year. This is gonna be the GLF 2.5 inch Juvy craw. This color is called Motor Oil. It's badass. These are gonna come in two different stylings. So one is gonna be floating claws, one is gonna be non-floating. It's just gonna depend on the color that you choose. So the darker colors are floating. The more clear colors like this guy are not going to have any floating in them. These pair up perfectly with that mini tube head. It's my favorite tube jig hook. That was kind of the selling feature for me to bring it into the store actually, was this hook. It comes over cover incredibly well. You can also rig this weedless. So if you pinch this guy up here, you can kind of slot it into the top of the plastic. They've made it a little bit thicker up here, so you can bring this through cover pretty good. In general, it's just an incredibly lifelike craw for these bass. They like the small ones, like I just said. They're a little bit easier for them to eat. They're not gonna have as big a claws to defend themselves. This guy is a killer. Like, I mean, how many guys got 7-pounders this year on this out of us? Yeah, like 3 or 4 of us at the shop literally caught 7-pounders on this little guy right here this year. And it's just been a killer. It's become a staple in my boat, staple in the shop, staple for a lot of you guys. So this is the 2.5 inch Juvy craw from Great Lakes Finesse. Okay, so last but not least, we have the Raid Zariganist. This is gonna come in two different sizes, the full size, so 3.9 inch, just shy of 4 inch, and then this guy, which is 2.75 inch. When this thing is flowing through the water, these tentacles are displacing a ton of water, and that's one of my favorite ways to fish it. Weightless, kind of in and around grass structure. The claws are both gonna be hollowed out, same with the head, so they're gonna have air bubbles, which is gonna kind of have that stand-up front end feature. Defensive position, it's kind of a thing with craw baits. Bass seem to understand that when they're up like this, they're ready to fight, and the bass usually wins. So these guys have incorporated that into this. All of these appendages, like I said, move crazy amount of water, has a lot of drawing power. Another way that I really love to fish this is on a Carolina rig. Same thing, as you're dragging it through, these appendages never stop moving. So if you guys are looking for something to drag, this is a great one. Pitching and flipping. You can even peg a little weight on there if you want to get it down a little bit quicker. This is just a phenomenal lights out bait from Raid. It has a great little hook keeper in the back. So after you rig it up, there's a little piece of plastic there. You put your hook through there. It just keeps it pegged, super streamlined. You're not gonna be pulling this up all the time with a bunch of grass on it. So this is a special bait from Raid, I think, especially in the 2 sizes that they did. The 2.75 seems to be a little bit more popular, but if I'm flipping, I always go with that 3.9 to start anyways. Just seems to get a bit bigger of a bite, which makes sense. Bigger bait, bigger bite. So check this one out from Raid and check all this stuff out in our shop. The Craw category is massive. There's a ton of great ones that we've missed, but these are kind of the favorite ones for us right now that we've been throwing a lot. I really love that Raid, especially for weightless Texas rigging. It has a ton of draw to it with those appendages, and then I mean, it's really tough to beat a DoLive Craw. So check all that stuff out. Thanks for watching, guys. Talk to you later.